Broads Media.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Open Ice Hits. The Penguins have net-minding problems. Is it a surprise? No, but it's uglier than I ever would have thought it would be. There's some horrendous goalie interference calls that we're going to dive into. Before all that, Durso, it is nice and early on this Thursday morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Pulling a couple of later nights than I'd like to with some of these games. Did you make it through the triple overtime couple nights back?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm always
Okay.
up. You know that. I don't know how my body functions. It's crazy. I go through...
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, well, this is what happens. I'll go through phases where I pound nights out where it's like 3 overtimes, 3 a.m., and then I need that one night where I'm falling asleep at like 9 o'clock and I'm sleeping till noon just for my body to hit that reset button, and then I'll have 15 more days of that 3 a.m. life, and then I need that one day for the reset button.
Yeah,
so it's
that's
one cycle.
Yeah, that is what it is. I'm actually kind of surprised it took us that long to get a marathon. We haven't had one of these late nighters that go, into 1 a.m., 2 a.m. territory. So it was. I love those games, by the way. I do. I know that it can lead to some awful looking hockey because of the fact they're so tired, but I love it. So
yeah,
where do you want to start today?
Well, where I want to start is Jarry. All right, because I thought
Tristan Jarry.
Look,
Here we go.
We all questioned heading into this series, is he going to be able to hold up? And, I mean, he sucked. It's just that simple. He actually sucked. He was way worse than I ever would have thought he would be. I knew he would have hiccups along the way, and there would be some question marks with the high glove, and there would be some times where it would probably be savable and it would get by him. He sucked. He was the reason why he lost like pretty much every single damn game. The overtime in Game 6, I don't know where he's playing the puck. Some of those goals against the Islanders in Game 6 when they came in that spurt, 5-hole shots from the blue line, like they weren't that dangerous of shots. I get it. Throw pucks on net, but he sucked.
Yeah, he wasn't very good. Look, we said it last show. I thought that something shifted with the way it wasn't just a win for the Islanders in Game 4. It was convincing. This was their style. And I started to continue to see it in Game 5. You just can't do that in Game 5 in overtime. You can't double overtime, I should say. It was, by that point it was. You just can't do that. What are you trying to do handling the puck like that in that situation and just turning it over? I just don't even know where his head was in that moment. And that's a game changer because I even told you in the last show, if they won Game 5, which they did, the Islanders, that is, I think they were going to close it out in Game 6 because I just thought. I know it's one of my notes. Is the atmosphere was awesome in that game. I love that.
Yeah, because
that's going to be
smaller building.
Yes. Now that's going to be the storyline though, or half of it anyway, for anybody who wins the cup, unless it's a Canadian team, maybe. Although at that point in time, half the story is it's finally a Canadian team. But for whoever wins the cup, it's going to be this. Half of the story is there was a great shot during the game, a great crowd shot where they actually showed one of the replays was a goal from like the opposite end of the rink with just the crowd reacting. And you go, that is half of the story with anything in these playoffs because it's been over a year. I'm not going to complain about how the bubble was or anything like that. Like I thought it produced some really good games and it was very legitimate how it all finished up, but this was missing. It was so clearly missing from playoff hockey, and now we're getting that again. And this, like, did they say on the broadcast? I thought they said that was 9,000 people.
Yeah,
you could have fooled me with that. It looked like a full building.
No, I know for sure. It was actually crazy. That was, it's funny because we've seen it in Nashville, we've seen it in Carolina, and those two games, those two places to play has been electric as well. But didn't it hit different in the Coliseum for some reason? And maybe I allude to it. Maybe it's just because of the size of the building made it that much impactful and made it that much louder with the X amount of people in there.
I feel like we're seeing it in every place that's bringing people back in bigger numbers. It's not quite there yet with some of the other East buildings yet. I know Boston's going this direction very soon. I think like this weekend is when they would allow for it. So I guess for Game 1 of the next series, they would be able to have close to a full building, and then we'll really feel it. But like I think Washington was still at 5,000. Like it doesn't hit with 5,000 quite as much. It's nice. It's more people than there were last year, but it doesn't quite hit as much. Like 9,000, 12,000, because I think Carolina was 12. It feels close to full. Like you really hear the noise. And I feel like Vegas was like that. Colorado was like that. Minnesota's crowds have been good. Like every place that's hosting fans right now, it's been really good to hear people.
Yeah, I agree.
Even Tampa was rocking last night.
Yeah, even the Florida Panthers were rocking throughout this series, so I'm with you there. But I want to get back to this Penguins thing because I thought Game 6 was interesting. It was so wide open, and we talked about Barry Trotz's system and how structured it is. And do you think that was part of his game plan of like, look, they want to run and gun, but it's so anti-Barry Trotz. So I find it weird that it played out the way that it did. It was like a Penguins game almost because you need it to be that open to get that many scoring chances. At the Islanders were the team to cash in on it most with that 3-goal spurt.
Which is why there's two sides of it for me, because it is so anti-Barry Trotz's system that it almost feels like it's a missed opportunity for the Penguins because you really had them where you wanted them multiple times in the game. 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. Like you had the lead 3 times and gave it back to them and then couldn't recover, and you had time to. I mean, realistically, if they score a goal at the end of the second period, I think we're talking about a totally different third period. But that was when the Islanders got back into their system at that point, got back into their structured play and shut things down from there. They're up 5-3, 2 periods in. Now we're not going to allow anything for the rest of the night, and they didn't. To me, with the Islanders, though, this is the consistent resilience this team has. They overcome adversity, and this is what playoff teams have to do. You're down 3 different times in that game when it looks like Pittsburgh's getting the momentum. It was a wide open first period. You got 4 goals. Then the early second period, it's the same thing because there was every goal of this game was scored in the first half of regulation. It looked like it was like, oh, we're getting one of these tonight, huh? You know, like, okay, this is the type of game you have to be able to win too sometimes. And the Islanders' ability to continue to come back from any sort of adversity that comes their way in one way or another. They're playing shorthanded from a health standpoint because they still obviously don't have Anders Lee. So that's a huge loss no matter how you swing it. And they go through that and they find a way to win this series even though they're missing one of their leaders. They continue to get goals from all over the place. This just happened to be, I guess, Brock Nelson's turn. I mean, Anthony Beauvillier has been excellent in the last few games. That pass
backdoor to Nelson was absolutely filthy for that backdoor goal.
I was really impressed by Beauvillier's goal to tie it up at 1, too. I mean, that's just when he
that
gets
was the
going.
Backhand top shelf.
Yeah, and glove side again, right?
Yes, sir.
But nonetheless, when he gets going, that's when they become dangerous. There were games early in the year where I'm like, this guy doesn't look like the player I saw last year. He's not quite getting there yet. And then I think somewhere in April, the switch flipped, and he just turned into the player we remember him to be. And everything about that was great. You know, like this is what makes them like. I saw like I'm sitting here looking at this team. I go, this is exactly what makes them dangerous to me. And there was a play. I'm trying to remember when it was. If it was still second, I think it was still second period. Maybe it was third period even.
Okay.
Matt Barzal makes a play that's just ridiculous. He doesn't score on it, and I didn't even care because I went, this is how when he gets that confident and the whole team looks that confident, they're as dangerous as anybody in the league. Like that to me just spoke of their confidence level, knowing like I think by that point they already looked at it and went, we're winning this series. We're getting ready to go to Boston. We just know it. And they're already building confidence for that series before this one's even over.
Yeah, it's crazy to me though, because I don't want to make this a negative thing at all, but I don't want to look at it negatively with the Islanders' perspective, my point is, but, man, Jarry really was a problem. And, like, if you just had a goalie that wasn't that way, would you feel the same way about the Islanders? Now, to be honest with you, it doesn't matter. No one's going to look back and go, well, these games didn't count because Jarry sucked. But would we be feeling this way about it when, you know, some of those goals were just flat out embarrassing, and you just wouldn't have that if there was anybody else in net? So, I don't know. And I don't want to make it seem like the Islanders didn't deserve it. They did. They did deserve it. You have a bad goalie in net. You're not going to go very far. That's why we look at goalies as strongly as we do. But, man, some of those were just it's hard for me to praise the Islanders for specific plays. They did make good ones, but there were others where they scored on. I'm like, they didn't do anything special there.
They didn't do anything special, but their structure creates turnovers and mistakes and things like that. I mean, you've got to avoid that against them. I do think that this, and we're not really going to try to touch too much on the second round. We'll do that the next show, but this to me is probably the two, in a way, most well-rounded teams in the division. Like, I picked Pittsburgh to win the series, but I still picked them in 7 because I'm like, this is not going to be easy. And I really don't think that anybody who's out there looking at the way the Islanders just played in the series and thinking about that aspect of it, oh, the goaltending for Pittsburgh was horrible, which sure it was. But if you're already overlooking the Islanders in the next series, think again, because this team looks like a team on a mission because of the way last year went and how close they came to being in the Stanley Cup final. Like, they look like they are determined to get further this year in some way. And granted, they might not get further because it's going to be a weird structure. You're going to play somebody who you haven't played all year to have to get there. That's fine. But the bottom line being that this team does know how to win games, and they know how to stay the course, even in games, take your pick. They've won really tight games. They've won games where they were dominant. I felt that way in game 4. Anyway, game 4, I'm like, they're dominant. Yeah. This is their game. But game 5 is tight. Game 6 is all over the place. It's wide open. They can win.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a coach in the league who's better at adjusting in game than Barry Trotz is. I really don't think there's anybody out there who I go, they figure out what the game is giving them and then adapt as quickly as anybody. And that's really important to the playoffs because you're going to get everything. You're going to get the wild cards thrown at you as much as you're going to get dealt the hand you want sometimes. Like, you're going to have everything click the right way, and you're going to have games where you don't deliver the right way, and things aren't things aren't going the right way. And he adapts. He knows how to get them ready to go for the next one. I don't even know. Like, there were times where game 5 wasn't their best game. They were really hanging in there because of Ilya Sorokin, and they win because of a turnover because they just stay the course with it. They probably almost didn't even have any reason to win that game in a sense.
Agree with you.
Like,
if you look at the shots and all, they were getting out pumped at times, and yeah, you're right. I mean, you just got to come up with that timely situation. The Barry Trotz thing is real. You're right. The versatility of how this team wins. It could be a shootout. It could be a close game. It could be, whatever the case is. Barry Trotz finds a way to get his team playing the way that it needs to come out with the victory on that given night based off of the style of play. So how about the Penguins? Because with this, we all talked about what would happen with this team if when they made the switch with the front office. Berkey, Hextall, are they going to trade guys? Are they in a rebuilding mode? Are they going to try and make one more playoff run? Well, they lost in this way. And I hate to really harp on this, but if you have a different goalie, I think you win the round. Like, I honestly, I think it's that easy. It's that simple. So do you start making changes? Do you start? I mean, you have to anyway. I do think it's time as these guys get older. Jeff Carter was their best player all series long. He was scoring the biscuit, and he's your pickup at the trade deadline. What does that say about Malkin? What does that say about Crosby? What does that say about some of these other guys? But is it as simple as different goalie, different playoff run? You feel differently about where the team is?
Possibly. Let's this way. They might win game 5 if not for Jarry's mistake. They might find a way to come back in game 6 if Jarry doesn't let in the 5th one, which was stoppable easily. So there's situations like I don't think it was Jarry's fault in game 4 that he gave up 4 goals and it's bouncing off his skates in front of him and things like that. Like, he's had a rough series, but to that point, you go, game 4 wasn't on him completely. But 5 and 6, you kind of can pin on him a lot. And you go, okay, what do you do now? I saw a couple tweets about it. It's ironic the way game 5 ends. He makes a mistake playing the puck. Look who his GM is, the guy who mastered playing the puck at that position. It's just kind of ironic in that sense. But I don't know what you do. I mean, I know that people are fed up with Jarry's performances in not just the playoffs, obviously, because he hadn't really been the guy. But like this year, there was this sense that he couldn't be the guy.
Are you surprised there was no attempt to switch that up, or is it really just it's not even worth it because the alternative is what it is?
I'm not surprised that there wasn't a switch because of the fact that Casey DeSmith was out, and if he was available, I think you would have seen him in game 6 after the 5th one, even for no reason other than to just try to change the tone of the game a little bit, just to send a message to the rest of the team. Because I don't think, we're talking a lot about Tristan Jarry, and for good reason. But there were guys who I thought were underwhelming throughout the series. Like, I even told you beforehand, I'm like, I don't think Sidney Crosby had the best series. He had some good plays, but we're talking more about Jeff Carter than we are about Sidney Crosby in this series. What does that tell you? Like, I think that, again, it's the approach of the Islanders is half of this, because you know who you got to shut down, and they did for the most part. I mean, did Crosby have more than a goal or two? I think he had two, maybe one for sure. But like, if the only goal you gave up to Crosby was the deflection in game one, that really nice deflection,
the one-handed one, yeah,
right. Like if that's all you're giving up, then great play by an outstanding all-timer. You know what I mean? Like, but other than that, what did you give up? Like, even Malkin didn't strike that often. Again, kind of in a way. Like Malkin, I think is going to get more of the attention because I don't think anybody's sitting there going, "Well, gee, Sidney Crosby didn't play the best series," and I think Sidney Crosby not playing the best series was a two-way thing. It wasn't just
1 assist in 6 games.
That's crazy, you know. I mean, that's crazy, but I don't think anybody looks at that and goes, "Oh, he didn't score or he didn't have the best two-way series. That's it. The Crosby era is over." I don't think you do that, but I think you start thinking with Malkin. I think you look at where Malkin is in his career and go, "Is it time?" Another name I saw pop up that's going to have to take some consideration. Now, they're both Malkin's under contract for next season. So is Chris Letang. But you start to think about the future either beyond that year. Do you try to see what you can do this offseason because it's so critical? Like a lot of player movement might not be the free agency thing again because of the cap. So
I think
you start to try to.
I think it's Malkin.
Oh, I think so too.
Yeah.
But because I think the only reason I think you're hearing Letang's name is because of how long he's been there. That's it. Like I don't think he's been terrible. I don't know if he can be the, they're like, I say this a lot about guys. Like I say this when I talk about the Flyers and Claude Giroux. I'm like, I don't know if you can keep going back to it and saying Claude Giroux is the best player on the Flyers year after year after year. I don't think you can look at the Penguins defensively and say the best defenseman they have is Chris Letang as we get to this stage of his career. Somebody's got to emerge at some point, or you got to get somebody else who's going to be the next guy who plays the big minutes.
Yeah, I guess I look at it a little differently with the defenseman. Although I get what you're saying. Like, if someone makes a trade for Malkin, I don't think anyone's going to say we want him to be the guy anymore. But if you have something to to tie him with, well, that's great. I think with the D-core, well, I'm with you. You want that number one, like Pietrangelo, or that number one guy that can log you 30 minutes, and if you need to, if the game goes deep or whatnot. But I think you can get by with Chris Letang still being that number one if you have him tied together with some other good, solid defensemen with him.
Right, and see where you're not. I'm not saying not hearing me, but like what I'm trying to make the point I'm trying to make with it is the amount of time he's been in Pittsburgh though makes a fan base go too long. Like he's been the number one for too long. Like sometimes you just want to see something different. Like I feel like that's where we're getting with Malkin too. Like Malkin's been that guy behind Crosby for so long, but is he really going to be the guy behind Crosby? Like, is somebody else going to jump this guy at some point? Like, or is that where you make the change? Because again, it's been this 1-2. You had success in the, early on with these two. You had success 5 years ago with them, but now you're not winning series.
Yeah, I don't think anyone.
So when do you change?
Yeah, I don't think anyone on the team now is going to make that jump. So it has to be coming from the external move.
So where do you get the money? Exactly. Like now, like you start to think about it, and that's the thing. Like I don't think anybody's like, I'm not trying to sit there and tell you Chris Letang can't play number one minutes. He can. I think people in Pittsburgh go, well, he's been here for a really long time, and now we're seeing that, because what is it now? 3 years in a row they've been out in the first round or in their first series or something like that, and it's like, okay. Maybe it's time to change things up. Like that's where your mind goes after you continue to lose in the first round when you were a cup team 4 or 5 years ago. That's what I think it is. And I think we try to build this team up because of those guys. Like I think outsiders do, because like like fans of the team, like fans of the team are always extra critical of the players they watch night in, night out. We look at them and go, well, wow, they were really clicking down the stretch. They got everybody kind of going their way. Look at Jeff Carter coming in and being a key piece. Kasperi Kapanen comes back from injury. He's been a key piece.
He had a nasty move in front of the net.
Now you throw them with Crosby and Malkin and Gensel and Brian Rust and go, okay, what do you got here? Like you might actually be able to put it together, make a run, and then in the playoffs it all just falls apart because a couple of those guys are shut down, in some way. Jeff Carter emerged as the leading goal scorer, and Sidney Crosby had 2 points, and Malkin couldn't play in the first 2 games of the series, I believe it was. So, like, you start to think a lot about your future when so many pieces have questions behind them to an extent from one series.
I go back to all that and I go, if the goalie didn't suck, we're still in a good position to win this series. So even with all
and that's
those
the difference
marks,
too.
Yeah, it's like I think
and that can be the difference. Well, and that can be the difference because if you win that series, do you stop? Like, do you push all that aside and go, we can kind of run it back.
Yeah,
right?
probably.
Like it's amazing how one series, not winning a series or not winning that one game that maybe shifts everything in the right direction in a series, will make you rethink your entire offseason plan potentially, because you're now thinking about, is it time with some of these guys? Is it time to shake some things up? Is it time to make a rash move of some kind? And I think it would be different if they had won and got a shot at Boston in the second round. And even if they didn't win in the second round, I think they would at least look at it and go, well, we were still one of the top 2 in the East Division, and we played everybody all those times, and you learn stuff as you go through. Like that would turn into, what did we say about this? That if a team played a 7-game series against one of these teams in the East after playing 8 games against them the first time around in a regular season, you're going to finish with 15 games against the same team. I'm pretty sure everybody was going to be able to adjust at some point.
Yeah.
So I don't think you hang your head from losing in the second round and not getting to the Final Four. If you're one of the last 8 standing, I think you're feeling pretty good. But if you're out in the first round, you start thinking.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. If I'm Berkey and if I'm Ron Hextall and we're going to objectively look at this season and look at this team, it's pretty damn simple. We're talking about all these changes, and I think that while they did underachieve, Crosby obviously did not step up during this, and maybe there's something we don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's battling injury or something of that nature.
And it's important for Brian Burke, especially because we already know Ron Hextall's affinity with building from within and the draft picks and things like, and they don't really have much to build with from within with, right? Like they don't have much of a prospect pool right now. So yes, the draft will be big for them to get that started. But if you're thinking about making changes, it's probably going to be significant because of the fact that there's not much you can do with the current roster to say, oh, so-and-so's coming up soon, right? Like there's not really that guy for them. They've got pretty much all of their guys, at this point, who are going to be there in the picture. So how do you change things? How do you improve? You got to go out and get it. And that's why I think that that's why they made the trade for Jeff Carter, and it's why they're going to probably look at all options going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why the Berkey and Hextall dynamic was interesting right from the jump. So, all right, there's that series. So we got the Islanders moving on. All right, let's get to these goalie interference calls because I'm pissed. I'm just sending you gifts left and right every single damn night at this point because of how atrocious it is. And we'll start with what happened last night between the Minnesota Wild and Vegas. I cannot believe that they called that goalie interference. It's embarrassing. It's a joke. It's pathetic. And it's just ridiculous that we are in this position now where they're calling off things like that. I mean, it actually pisses me off that you're going to change an entire playoff game and potentially a series because of that nonsense. So I can't believe it, even though I can believe it, because it's a discussion all the time that they can never get right. They never know what they're doing. They never know what to call. But there's no way in hell that should be called the way that it was in Vegas. Well, in Minnesota, I guess. It should not happen.
Right. So here's the thing I'm going to say about this. There are no 2 greater words in sports in my mind, especially in hockey, than the 2 that we got from this game. Game 7. I love hearing that. I wanted to see, that's what I was saying before we started. 3 games yesterday, 3 game 6s, all in a position to go to a game 7. You thought maybe you'll probably definitely get 1, maybe get 2, and it's going to set up a Friday that you're sitting there going, kick off this long weekend for me in a great way because game 7s are awesome. I don't feel satisfied knowing there's a game 7 in this series because of how it happened. Like, that's not the way I should feel today in remembering that game and going, and this is the thing. I have no problem with a lot of stuff in the game leading up to it. You had 2 periods where the game is a complete chess match. No one's scoring goals. There are very few shots. These 2 teams are literally strategically planning how they can try to attack smartly so that it doesn't get out of hand. And then finally, something breaks. Ryan Hartman breaks the ice in this game. Minnesota takes the lead. And I'm sitting there at that moment going, wow, it might go 7. And in a legitimate way, because you're going, they got the first one. It's a good goal. No problems. And then that happens. And I feel like if game 7 is one of my favorite 2-word phrases to hear in hockey, I'm getting really tired of 2 other 2-word phrases that we keep talking about a little too much for my liking. One is goaltender interference and one is player safety. Like, we talk about that stuff too much. You're taking away from the game. And you know what really bothers me? Because we had a discussion about another goalie interference call in the Carolina-Nashville series the night before. The one thing I like about that call, not the call itself, but the thing I like is the officials didn't confer first and then turn it to the other side and say, oh, no, wait, Carolina, you have to challenge now if you think it's a goal. They made Nashville challenge and then overturned it, and even whether it's right or wrong, it kept the game, but it kept the game at the score. It didn't put Nashville on the power play to then go out and try to turn the game around. And that's how Carolina, that's why I texted you back. Like, all's well that ends well. The team that played the best in the game won the game. It's 3-2 Carolina in the series going to Thursday. For what reason? Because they were the better team and they found a way to win despite that. But this game, it's totally different because if you allow the call to stand on the ice as it was, which was a goal at first, then you force Minnesota to challenge instead. Even if you overturn it and get the call wrong again, but you overturn it on Minnesota side, at least it's still a 1-0 game, no power play.
Yeah, but
you're
at
go
that
right
time,
back to,
who would make that decision? It would be the people in Toronto to say if it would be overturned or not, correct? It wouldn't be on the referees?
Right, but what I'm saying is that, like, to me, if you called it a goal on the ice there, what made you get together and say, wait a minute, we got to overturn this before we do that? Like, that's what really blew my mind, is they're going to overturn the call on the ice first? Like, I don't get it. And then you push them into a situation where now Vegas has to challenge in order to see if the goal counts, which it should have, to then sit there and say, wait, nope, it's still no goal. We looked at it. Now it's no goal, and now you get a penalty.
Yeah.
And of course they go out and score on the ensuing power play, because at that point in time, the game was over. Like, how do you come back from that? And it was really over later on when Nick Bukestad scores to make it 3-0, obviously. But I would have loved to have seen the game play out with 12 minutes left. The call was wrong, but I'd love to have seen if it played out the rest of the way and you go, for 12 more minutes, Vegas is pushing down by 1 with a real chance to get that goal back and then maybe win in overtime. Or even if it gets to overtime, at least it would have, it could have gotten to overtime at 1-1 if the goal would have counted.
I just don't understand in general how you even think to call the original call to begin with. It's so hard for me to wrap my head around it, because now we're at the point where if someone's screening the goalie and the goalie's glove nicks the elbow pad, then now all of a sudden that everything, like, oh, he couldn't slide over to his right, and that changed the entire rhythm of him. Like, no way. I mean, you're allowed to screen the goalie. You're allowed to get into his grill.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that we still don't clearly know what calls should be from these situations. How many years has this been going on for? It's been at least 5 in my mind, and they've tried to adjust the rule over the years, but it's like, you got to come up with something clearer than this. Like, you really do, because now you're changing the course of playoff games. You've got to come up with something clearer, and because here's the other thing about it. I don't want to have these conversations. I think I could tell from Twitter, because it sure seemed like one of the guys who was really talking about, do you think Ray Ferraro wants to be having these conversations? Because he didn't seem thrilled about talking about it again. Like, and that was the real shame of it for me, was, truthfully, and I think I even tweeted this, I'm like, great game, really great game 6. Minnesota's in it the whole way, could have gone either way halfway through, and Minnesota forces the game 7. And it's not to say that Minnesota did not deserve to win that game. They played really well in every other aspect of the game beyond one call. Cam Talbot made a save that was ridiculous right before it. So I'm giving tons of credit to them. Their defensive structure was outstanding the whole game. But what are we going to talk about from it? We're going to talk about a goalie interference call. That's what I don't like. I'm not taking away from Minnesota. I even had this series going 7 anyway, so I'm not shocked we're here. It's just the way we got there now is instantly marred because of the fact that you have a call that went the wrong way.
Yeah,
that's the problem I have.
It reminds me of the face-off with San Jose and Vegas, and
I thought the same thing last night.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks because you're right. Minnesota does deserve a lot more praise. It was a battle for 90% of the game. Like, this is literally, if you think about it, the change was about a 4% of the game that we're talking about compared to the other parts of it where they were playing strong and they were going toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the NHL, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. Yet here we are talking about the disgrace, and the same thing that you alluded to that happened with the Nashville game. But you're right. I mean, in that game, it feels different because I think it played out in a more applauding way. I don't know if that makes appealing way, a more appealing way to us, the way that it ended.
Well, it's because of the fact that you didn't turn the game around with a power play to follow it. You had Nashville challenge the call. So if you call it the other way and say, because again, this is one goal on the ice, now you've got to overturn it. If you keep it correct, Carolina gets a power play. If you don't, It's a 2-1 game again, and Nashville's still leading, but there is no power play for Nashville now that could turn the game in different.
I can't believe you liked that call though, because you said your dad. I hated it.
I didn't say I liked it. What I said was I saw what they saw.
Oh God, I hate what they saw.
But at the same time, I'm just saying, what I don't like, and maybe the fact that it's come up 2 nights in a row now is, if you're a goalie, all you have to do is throw your hands up after a puck goes in when you're screened and say, I got breathed on the wrong way, and they'll talk about it. And that's why we have to reform the rule. Like, the rule needs to be corrected in some way where we know. We just need to know. Like, there have been other goalie interference calls in the playoffs so far, and in games before the playoffs, where we go, oh, yeah, look, you clip the skate, the guy's down and out.
That's what I was going to say. How do you word it where if a goalie's glove gets nicked because of a screen, it's not necessarily going to overturn the call? Like, it's so subjective. The problem is it's so, subjective.
I'll tell you how one way you can do it, and I saw this on Twitter because Ray Ferraris talked about it. Apparently, in the junior level, in World Juniors, if you're even in the crease, they can waive it off for a crease violation. And I'd hate to see it, because then I think now you're telling other players how they have to play, but at least there's no gray area.
Yeah,
you're
but
in the
then
crease,
what's going to happen is you're going to be in the crease. Your nick tiny back of your blade is going to maybe be on the blue.
And that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say you're going to change the way players play the game, because let's put it this way. Could you imagine if they had to play that way 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Wayne Simmons wouldn't have a job.
Wayne Simmons wouldn't have a job. Tim Kerr wouldn't be a Flyers Hall of Famer. Like, you think about it. You can't stand if you can't stand in front of the net, then guess what? To me, you're ruining your product as a league, because of the fact that don't you thrive off like we just had this long conversation about Tristan Jarry, how bad he was in a series, but he had a 5-3 game the night, in the last game of a series. The league loves that. They love the constant goal scoring. So, do you want that? Because if you want that, then you need to clear up this rule without taking away the ability to screen the goalie. Because that's how half the goals in the league are scored anymore, is by getting in the goalie's face.
Yeah. No, look, I'm with you there. By the way, you mentioned Ray Ferraro, so a little sidetrack here. How about the great one? How about the great one?
I love this,
dude. This is what makes me feel good about this. I think that TNT, Turner, all this. I think they're gonna. It seems like their head is in the right space to make sure that this is like. If it flops, it flops, which I find it very hard to based off these personalities. But they're going for it. They're going for the right people.
Sure, they are,
and that's what you need. You gotta attack it the right way. You can't half-ass this.
Do you know what I think really works well too? By the way, in this situation, when it's all one network and you don't know, like you kind of don't know who you're gonna get on certain nights to an extent, but also you start to see the same faces pop up. Who's doing the Wednesday night games? Who's doing Sunday afternoons? Who's doing the studio work, right? Like you eventually see the same face. Now we're going to see people splitting up in different areas. Like now you're not going to get, because what is it for TNT? That's where Eddie Olczyk's going. That's where Kenny Albert's going. Wayne Gretzky's going to do a studio show, be part of the studio show they're going to have. And then on the other side, you're going to go, who's going to ESPN? Brian Boucher's going to ESPN, right? Like, so you got guys like that going there, and you realize, and Ferraro's going to ESPN and things like that. So you're going to get a mix of people, and now it just creates more voices. Like that's supposed to be one of the things that creates more opinions on things. Like you need to be able to go to different places to see different things and have more people talking on different nights. And I'd love to see also how they're going to integrate the NHL Network crew into some of this too, because there's jobs to be had out there for a lot of places. I think I saw a rumor that Keith Jones is going to TNT as well.
I would not be surprised. We're so spoiled getting him every night. You know, one guy though, NHL Network, that I can't get a vibe on, and I don't want to say he's not bad. I'm not saying
we're going here. No, we're off the playoff game for a minute.
I'm not saying he's bad. I just can't get a vibe on him, and that's EJ. I just don't know how I feel about. I don't think he's bad. I'm not saying that, but I just don't connect with him. That's all. I just don't connect with him when he's on it. Like I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know.
Look, that's fair. I mean, when we watch these things, there are guys we like and guys we don't like as much. I will say,
it's not like I don't like him though, because I think he's very knowledgeable. I think he's strong.
Right.
He brings to the table.
That's why I said it the way I did. There's guys we really like, and there's guys we don't like as much, who still know a lot and still give a lot of good information, but we're kind of not as big of a fan of them, you know?
Yeah, like Babcock in the studio. I don't even know. I texted you this once. I'm like, I'm not making fun of like his strong accent or whatever, but man, what is he saying?
It's also, I mean, it's very coach speak too. I
You
mean, like
think?
it's very let's go boys in the locker room, you know?
Oh man, it's amazing.
Like it's ever like the opposite of him is everything I love about Patrick Sharp. You know what I mean? Like Patrick Sharp's great at this job.
Yes. The suit game is ridiculous.
We're talking suit game.
Yeah,
too.
well, people like to call him the man rocket of the studio man. That's what everyone calls him. I mean, he's got the suit game.
He's great though.
Yeah,
he's great.
I agree. Okay, let's get back to some hockey. Leafs. We talked about the Canadians, giving them their young guns a shot, an opportunity. There's no reason not to play the younger guys. They did, and it's not because they're not losing because of that. They're losing because they're overpowered and overmatched. Carey Price can only do so much. Imagine Carey Price on the Penguins. You'd probably win the cup. If you think about Carey Price, he's doing everything he possibly can out there for the most part, keeping your team in there as much as possible. But let's be realistic. We witnessed the Maple Leafs be the Maple Leafs all season long for a reason. I wonder how the Tavares thing is going to impact them as they continue to move forward, but they were able to, look, this series is what it is, and I think deservingly so. It's going this direction.
Literally one of the notes I have, because from Game 4, it was not a close, low-scoring game, and Carey Price needs to keep it that way for Montreal to even have a chance. Yeah. And that's not me knocking Carey Price, because literally my Game 3 note was Carey Price did everything he could to keep it close and within reach. It's just, this team is putting its stamp on the series. They're overpowering. I got to imagine you were in all of your glory watching Game 4 when it's Jason Spezza. Again, what is that, 94-year-old Jason Spezza?
Yeah.
And I guess by that logic, then I'll steal his jersey number and say 97-year-old Joe Thornton. And what age should we give to Alex Galchenyuk, who had an outstanding game too? But nonetheless,
he's the younger cat. I guess he's not even that young anymore. Huh? He's been in the league.
He's not. That's the thing.
These
are the grizzled veterans who have bounced around to teams or who have been playing for years and years.
Galchenyuk's got to still be in his 20s, though. No, is he not?
I don't believe he is.
I thought he was like 30s.
I thought he was like 32, 33.
I would be stunned. He's 27.
Oh, he's 27.
27.
He's just played for so many teams, but nonetheless. All right, it's the depth thing though. Like it's not Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner. William Nylander did have a goal in there, by the way. He's probably been one of the best core guys, probably filling the Tavares role as well as anybody.
He's the Ben Simmons of this city, by the way. When you listen to Toronto sports markets, he's the one where he'll have 3 assists, but they nitpick why he did it or how he did. He's the hot item for sure.
And I mean, even down to Game 4 again, Jack Campbell's getting going into a rhythm too. Like you're getting all the closer you get to having everything piece itself together properly, right? Like the goalie's playing well, defensively your structure looks good. You're getting guys who are delivering the right way. And look, we knew this was a mismatch, so I don't feel like this means that Toronto's just gonna roll right on through the other series that they're gonna play, and I'm sure we're about to touch on that one because that one's now over and done. We kind of said it was over last show, but nonetheless, the thing that motivates teams like the Winnipeg Jets, who they would face if they win Game 5 or any game down the road here, is no one gives you a shot, right? Like when people tell you don't have a shot in this series, I don't care. Like you're playing Connor McDavid. What do you think is going to happen if they get the Toronto Maple Leafs? It's going to be you don't have a shot against Austin Matthews, and then that they go watch us. Just wait and see what we can do. So I think you're getting an interesting series if that's the way it goes. And you're right. I wonder what's going to happen with the Tavares dynamic after that, because certainly they look like after, and maybe that's a big chunk of why Game 1 went the way it did now in hindsight, because since then it looks like they're playing for him and they're winning every game because of that. So I do think that there's a part of that is if Carey Price isn't standing on his head, then it's pretty much over. But
I agree with you there. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. You got your emotional side to it for sure, that you want to play for your captain and get it done. At the same time, that adrenaline push or that extra motivation, it can only go so far to a degree. If you play a team that has more talent than the Canadians, we won't be talking about it the same way, but they have an overpowering balance of roster construction this year compared to years past. So that's definitely part of it. All right, so you touched on Connor McDavid and the Jets and all. And Dude, this is brutal. It really is. It's brutal. It's honestly frustrating as a fan because I need to see more of this. I need to see this in the playoffs, and I don't even know what to say about it. It's a joke. It's a joke that this team can't do anything, and I don't want to hear that they're not built properly. They just got swept by the Winnipeg Jets. I don't want to hear that. Well, it's just McDavid and Draisaitl. They have enough talent on this specific roster. The way Mike Smith was playing all year. I mean, there was enough in the tank for Mike Smith to win a damn hockey game. You can't be getting swept. Darnell Nurse stepped up this year. There's enough on this roster this season where we did not deserve as hockey fans to see that team get swept. So that's where I have a problem. What is going on in Edmonton?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like the take that I saw going around that was Connor McDavid needs to sacrifice points for better two-way play. I understand the argument to an extent, okay, because there are examples out there from previous captains where you say, give us more on the other end, give us more 200-foot game, and watch everybody follow in your footsteps. I get it. I mean, I've heard that story several different times with several great players. I think the example that was brought up in that specific in the tweet that was going around was the Steve Yzerman conversation. You have a conversation with Steve Yzerman about being more of a 200-foot guy and not just carrying everything offensively. Look what happens. It happened with Mike Modano. It happened with a lot of Hall of Fame caliber players, which we pretty much already know Connor McDavid is that kind of player. He's on that level. I don't think that's the whole story, though. I agree that you could, that everybody could follow his lead if he played better defense sometimes. Don't get me wrong. But he's not on the ice for a lot of the goals against either. Sometimes his best defense is his offense. And where's everybody else? Where is the support? And I don't think it's a lack of talent. You're right. There are a handful of guys that I think you might think about moving on from at some point, and you think about making changes. But at some point in time, you sit there and you go, what is it with this team? Why don't they seem to be able to put it together when the calendar flips over, when the regular season stops and the playoffs start? What is it about this team? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's frustrating.
Now, I don't want to just gloss over that whole thing and then say, well, no credit at all to Winnipeg, because I laughed about this because you even said when we did our preview show, I don't even know if I got anything to say on Winnipeg because this is just going to be the McDavid show, right? It should just be the McDavid show, right? You didn't even want me to talk about a Winnipeg point. And I said I wanted to see the Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor dynamic. And I think we got it in some of these games because they were two of the best players in the series.
Well, I will admit, you're right. And I am, now that I saw this, and maybe because this is how it always works, right? The added storylines from series to series makes the next series more intriguing. So I think I needed that for the Winnipeg effect to really hit me harder. I am now so excited to watch Connor play, to score more goals. And I knew what Scheifele brought to the table. I know about Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, I know about their team in general. It's just they're boring. Right. They're a boring market. They're a smaller market team. They just don't pop. They're not sexy. I mean, it's just reality of the situation. It's not a sexy place. Winnipeg stinks. It's a terrible spot. There's nothing there. Nothing is cool about the Winnipeg Jets. But now that you see them sweep Connor McDavid and all, now there's that added storyline that makes it more intriguing of, look what this team is doing. No one talks about them. They seem to be flying under the radar, even though they have all the talent on paper, and even though they did go through a hell of a stretch this regular season at one point where they should have been recognized more. But yeah, I needed that. I needed that to build that extra noise surrounding the team for me for the next round.
And as much as we want to focus on, and it's the truth, Winnipeg's top guys stepped up and did what they had to do to produce. The teams that are emerging as the really good ones are the ones that have guys that I sit there and go, I'm just as impressed with their fourth liners as I am with their top liners. That triple overtime game was as methodical of an overtime as I'd seen in a long time. This was two teams literally out there waiting for the other to make a mistake, to do something that created an opportunity. And what was it in this case for Winnipeg? It was a bad line change that gave the space. Now Kyle Connor can take that pass, go straight up the ice, and get his shot. But you got to get to that point in the game. And that means you're rotating in guys. And certainly the benches were shortened in overtime. No question about it. But at the same time, I feel like I'm hearing big things and big opportunities on Winnipeg's side from, did anybody know who Mason Appleton was before this season? Seriously,
right.
These are guys who step up in the playoffs and you go, they're not the heroes. They're not the guys who score the winning goals sometimes, but they have to have a job to play. I love the Islanders' fourth line. I love watching, when next thing you know, you go out there and you go Cal Clutterbuck, Matt Martin, Casey Cizikas. It's a great line. It does the job almost every single time. Boston's got guys like that. Sean Corrali's a guy for Boston that I really like watching. Like every team's got that guy that makes it this far that you go, they're not even they're not even close to the best player in the team. They're not supposed to be, but they do their job so well in their role that that's what makes them a great team.
Definitely.
And even Toronto's doing this because Toronto's getting production from them because I mean, did I not hear at one point in time that they said Joe Thornton's was a fourth liner in one of the games? Like, okay, Joe Thornton's a fourth liner. That's outstanding. The guy's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But he's a fourth liner for your team.
I know.
How much depth do you think you have,
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And I remember watching that line change and that neutral zone play. I was like, oh, for Winnipeg. Once you saw that much time and space in that overtime during the neutral zone where it was just quick transition, man. And it's like, uh-oh, here we go. There
are moments that when you're just sitting on your couch that make you get up the way that the players rise on the bench when you see the space in front of you. That was one of them for sure. Like you saw daylight for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, definitely. But all right, look, we're going to pretty much end it here. The Tampa Bay Lightning do advance over the Panthers. Do you have any final remarks on that one? Because, we knew what team had the Ekblad injury. It was a fun series. I'll give Panthers a lot of credit for the way that they battled through it and all. They were undermanned, and Tampa Bay's obviously the more, look, they got the more insane talent and whatnot, so I'm not surprised. But any final remarks on it or not too much?
I'll give two really quick ones because first of all, admirable job by the Florida Panthers, as you mentioned, but also really admirable job by Spencer Knight, who played the last two games and looked really good. Like I think that's got to be the guy going forward at this point. Like
yeah.
he stepped into the role. And then for Tampa's side of things, because I see a lot of people are going, man, when this team's going, they're really going. Braden Point had an outstanding goal in that pretty much decided the game if we made it 3-0, but they're never going to have, and I guess this borderlines the last conversation we just had, the last topic we were on, because they're never going to have, they're never going to have the best forward in the game right now because you're not going to have Connor McDavid. You're not going to have Sidney Crosby. It's just not going to happen. But I think they probably have, when they're really clicking, 3 top 10 forwards on their roster in Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point. And Point's so far down that list, it's ridiculous because he probably should be higher. But then I go, they've got the best defenseman in the game, in my opinion. They got the best goalie in the game, in my opinion. So what do you get when you have 2 of the best at their position, and then you can say, I got 3 out of the top 10. You got a really good team. It's got a shot all the time. So there you go.
Here's the tease for the next episode. If Tampa Bay had Jarry, would they win the Stanley Cup?
Oh, don't do that to me.
I won't do that. All right, everyone.
No, but I am looking forward to when we get to the next round.
Oh, yeah.
Now. I mean, we're really close. I mean, there's a couple really good ones. We got a Game 7 coming up, a Game 6 that could go either way, as we've seen in the series. But
sure.
We'll see.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode of Open Ice Hits, and we'll see you guys next time.